Hello, guys. How are you? Can you see me?
Yes.
All right. We're streaming live in YouTube in my channel, and I hope most of my class on ocean exploration is connected. YouTube in my channel, and I hope most of my class on ocean exploration is connected. Excellent. Well, there's something very special about this expedition for us, since one of the study cases is the Deepwater Horizon. And for Colombians, Macondo well has some particular meaning because it's part of 100 Years of Solitude by Garcia Marquez. But anyway, it's part of this environmental strategy, and we're really looking forward to know about your results on the effects of the Deepwater Horizon on corals and other organisms. I don't know, what can you tell us about it, just to start with?
Yeah, sure. So we are right now on 10-day. As one was saying, to study coral communities, both affected and unaffected by the horizon also. And we're also looking at other ecosystems in the Gulf of Mexico and their association with natural hydrocarbon seeps as well. So one of the things that some of the scientists more are looking into is understanding what the connections are between hydrocarbon seeps and fragmented seeps and other hydrocarbons and corals, for example, because we often see corals living in areas where there are coal seeps. And in my particular case, I'm really here to collect specimens that will be used to perform genetic analysis, to do population genetics and connect that with current physical oceanographic models that will tell us about how diversity is structured in the Gulf of Mexico and how the patterns of differentiation in populations really what's influencing them and what the implications of those connectivity patterns are for management of protected areas and deep water ecosystems in the Gulf of Mexico. Emily can tell us some other things that we're also doing here, including outreach, etc.
So I'm part of the ECOGIG outreach team, and ECOGIG is a research group that works in the Gulf of Mexico. And ECOGIG stands for Ecosystem Impacts of Oil and Gas Inputs to the Gulf. And we are a group that one of our goals is to look at the deep water corals, but ECOGIG actually studies the entire Gulf ecosystem from top to bottom and looking at the connectivity between the surface and the deep sea. And my job is to tell people about what ECOGIG is doing. I'm also on board this expedition to help process some water samples that are being collected around the corals to understand the microbiome around the corals. So we're filtering water for DNA to look at what kinds of bacteria and other things are around the coral. We're looking at methane gas in the water. We're also processing sediment samples, and I'm helping kind of process and preserve some of those samples. So
that's pretty interesting. I was wondering if you guys have been studying endosymbiotic bacteria in octocorals. Have you found some of those endosymbiotic genera?
There is some collaborators on board that are looking at the microbiome of the corals. Whether or not they're looking specifically at endosymbiotic relationships, I'm not sure, but in general, the microbiomes, and they're finding some very interesting patterns where there are particular microbial groups, some genera that are very dominant in certain species compared to others. And then that association seems to be very strict. So you always find those weird kinds of bacteria or uncharacterized kinds of bacteria in those particular corals and not in others. So one of the things that I'm really interested in is being able to compare for example, the population genetic patterns with the microbiome patterns, whether that could be also another variable that can explain the genetic differences that we see at the population level and what the implications are for the ecosystems.
Right, great. I would like to ask you a general question about the technology you're using at the moment, the type of ROV and cameras in general.
Yeah. So you can see in the background, this is what we're doing right now. In fact, I just stepped out of the ROV control room. We're collecting samples. That's the ROV arm. You can see this in YouTube. It's the same thing that you see in YouTube. So this is a remotely operated vehicle that is rated for, I think it's 4,000 meters, if I'm not correct, if I'm not wrong, sorry. But the deepest we're working here is 2,000 meters. Right now we are at 1,830, actually 156 meters. So almost 2 kilometers deep. And the vehicle is about the size of maybe like a golf cart, a little bit shorter, but that's about the size. And it has that robotic arm, it's a hydraulic arm that can be controlled from the surface by a pilot. And it has all the functions and movements that a human arm has, so it mimics the human arm. Also, the ROV is equipped with a CTD sensor to measure the pressure that is translated into depth, temperature, conductivity. That's basic environmental parameters. And it has several cameras. One, a 4K camera. I think it has about 3 HD cameras. And also there's a digital stills camera that's in a housing. That can be, the arm can grab it and you can point it at a coral in any angle and get really close and get a really high resolution image. That's actually what one of the main things we're doing here is monitoring individual corals. So we're monitoring over 200 different individual colonies of corals that were both affected and unaffected by the oil spill. And this is work that has been going on for 7 years now. So every year visiting the exact same corals, imaging them from the same angles and seeing how they change over time. Again, for corals that were exposed to the oil and dispersant, but also corals that were not exposed. So there's been a lot of work that has come out really interesting in understanding what the effects of the oil spill have been, and also what the interactions between the corals and other animals mean for the health of the corals. So one of the really cool results that some of the science, part of the science team that is on board and involved in the project has generated is that the corals that have brittle stars, so the ophiroids, on them, those corals that were affected by the oil, but they had those brittle stars, they kept the area with the brittle star healthy. It was the only part of the coral that remained alive. But it seems like the brittle stars are playing an important role in keeping the tissue of the coral alive and make them more resilient to things like oil spills or natural disasters, or human anthropogenic disasters, I'll say.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, maybe Emily can tell you about the presence on the internet that we're doing.
Yeah, so we are obviously broadcasting live to YouTube whenever the ROV is down. We were able to go through the ship's internet by satellite to broadcast to YouTube, and then we've got internet to be able to talk to people on Google Hangout, and we're working to just keep everybody up to date as we can with our social media as well. So we're doing as much as we can with The internet, which the seas have been great, so our internet is good. If it rained on us earlier in the week and we lost internet, so it just depends. So our social media accounts that you guys can follow to stay up to date are we have a Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram that are ECOGIG, ECOGIG, and also we have another social media person on board. Her account is Ocean Allison, so you can follow her as well. We'll be posting pictures throughout the cruise and videos, and hopefully even a blog or two through our website, ecogig.org.
Yeah, and if Juan has been, you chatted with us earlier in the week, so it's also a nice way that if anybody has any question, we are continuously monitoring that, and if we can answer live over the stream.
Yep, on the YouTube live stream, you can chat with us and we'll answer questions.
Yeah, it's been a fantastic expedition so far. I've been trying to follow it as much as possible. And, I've been reading a lot of papers about Paramuricia vizcaya, this soft coral. And this is the first time I've been able to see it alive. So that's been fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't
that's
know
one
if,
of the for the expedition.
I don't know if some of the other attendees of the students they want to say something or ask something either in the chat or here. I don't know if Anna,
Hi.
Christina, or Felipe.
Christina, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Wondering once the rope has to be, how often does it have to go up, and what does technical things you have, like stable under?
Sorry, we couldn't hear you very well. Can you repeat the question?
Maybe we could type it somewhere. Is there a chat somewhere?
Or
Now?
maybe Juan can tell. We can hear you, yeah?
Yep.
Okay. I was wondering how often does the rope has to go up, like, or can it be submerged all the time? And what do you need to do, like, technically, so that it can work properly?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Yeah, so the ROV is remotely operated, so there's no, it actually doesn't have that many needs to stay down there. It only needs the power from the ship, but it has a cable. So this ROV, or most ROVs, can stay down for an indefinite amount of time. So they can be there for days. So I know some stay down for weeks. Depends on the work they're doing. I think the limitation or the time factor is more what kind of work you need to be doing. So for our purposes, we're collecting biological samples that obviously we want to get back on board as soon as possible, so we can process them and preserve them for the different analysis we want to do. And yeah, in terms of the technology to stay down there, as I said, the main thing is the cable that communicates the video and all the data with the ship, but also provides power to the ROV. And the rest, all the circuits and the electronic parts of the ROV are in boxes that are often filled with oil. And that's number one, to protect them from pressure, and number two, to prevent water to get in. So even if there's water that gets in, the oil serves as a way to insulate the electronics to prevent damage. And the arm works with hydraulics, so it also needs hydraulic fluid, and as long as that fluid is in there and it's working properly, there's no problem. You don't need to recharge it. Sometimes there's leaks; those are rare, and in those cases, you have to recover and fix the problem.
I don't know if anyone else wants to ask something to their explorers right now. All right. Well, a general question is, what do you think are the major challenges for this type of exploration and in general for ocean exploration?
Want to answer? Okay, no.
In this expedition in general, I think that it's challenging to study a deep sea environment because it's hard to get down there and it's hard to see what you're doing, and you know, we only know a tiny bit about the deep seas, but every day the technology gets better and better, so we can explore more and more as we have better technology. What do you think the challenges are for this particular?
Yeah, definitely technology is a limitation. You need special equipment like these big ships and ROVs that can do the work. And something that comes along with that is the cost. It's expensive to develop and maintain that technology. So that's a limitation. It's not easy to do the work because it's expensive and it's technically difficult. But that's one of the reasons why whenever we come out to sea, we are constantly working. There's never a break. There's never a downtime here. We are working sometimes 24 hours a day, literally. I mean, as individuals, we're always doing things 24 hours. We take shifts, for example, for the ROV. So there's always somebody working the ROV. As soon as the ROV comes back, we're processing samples and getting the ROV ready to go back down again. So turnaround time between dives is just maybe a couple hours at most. So we're constantly working and making every single minute that we're here count. And that includes this kind of things, communicating what we're doing to people as much as we can.
Yeah, even the communication side is not cheap. So we just try to do as much as we can. And collecting samples, we try and collect as much, if not more, than we need. So that way we don't go, uh-oh, we really wish we had X, Y, Z when we get back. We try and just get as much as we can.
Yeah, and we try to also to be very efficient with the time and what we do. So it's really interesting or remarkable to know that in this expedition, we are actually ahead of schedule on things we plan to do. We've been working faster than we had planned. So we're being able to do more than what we planned. So this is going really well so far. And you know, a third challenge I will add in there is the unpredictability of the work. When you come out to sea, you are at the mercy of what the weather is like. If there's a storm coming, you can't do the work. You have to wait for the storm to pass by. And there's a lot of unexpected things that can happen. The ship can break, the ROV can break, somebody can get sick, and you have to go back to port or find a way to get them to a hospital, etc. And it's challenging. Right now we're pretty close to shore, so like getting help is easy, but we're in a remote area of the world where you're days away from any port, that can be a much bigger challenge.
Just yesterday we had our cold room that's supposed to be at about, what's the Celsius?
About 4 degrees Celsius. It's a room that we use for processing samples and keeping corals alive.
It was a hot room yesterday, so we luckily had someone on board who could figure out a fix.
Yeah.
So you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, so it's always an advantage to have a team that has multiple expertises on board that can, knows a lot about different things. Because in cases that things go wrong, you are often limited to the resources and knowledge that you have on board. So having, a good team of people here is also critical.
I think Felipe Magalla wants to ask. Please, Felipe, go ahead. Turn on your phone.
What is the best thing we have seen in this expedition?
best thing. What's for you, Emily?
Well, you know what? Just a few minutes ago, we saw some big pink floating thing. Did you guys see that down there?
Yeah.
What was
today,
that? We don't even know what it was.
We saw something that looked like sea cucumber, fuzzy sea cucumber, pink. It was about this big.
Somebody's scarf. I don't know.
Sorry, about this big. You can see my hands. My thinking is that it was a siphonophore, but the other biologists in the room didn't agree with me, so there was no consensus. It was, a really weird animal. We've seen some sharks around as well. We've seen jellyfish, red crabs that come and try to fight with the ROV. They don't like when the claw reaches in to sample, gets close. They attack.
Claw versus claw.
Yeah, so it's always finding interesting thing. I will say like one of my favorite things is always when we go to hydrocarbon sip, when you have just gardens of tube worms coming out of the sediment that are using the methane through bacterial symbiosis to live, as well as mussels. So you actually see the methane bubbles coming out from the sediment as it's sipping. So that's always really cool. I think. I don't know if I can see that. I think Felipe wrote a question in the chat here.
Oh, I see.
But we. I see it. Okay. So the question from Felipe is there a failsafe regarding the ROV in case you lose contact and what you're hoping to find in the following immersions? Okay. Actually, that's a really good question. This ROV, I'm not actually sure if it has a failsafe if you suddenly lose communications with it. Other ROVs do, so you can actually communicate with them without the cable. You can communicate with them acoustically using basically pings of sound. This one, I'm not sure what this failsafe. I think there's another scientist here. Oh, okay. So this one also has an acoustic communication system of beacons that allows it to communicate and be located. And I know some other ROVs, probably this one too. In case of emergency, they have a release, basically there's a ballast that they always bring down. And in case of an emergency, is programmed to release the ballast, so it becomes buoyant and comes to the surface. So I'm pretty sure this ROV has that as well. Most big ROVs have that. So in case you can't communicate at all, it's programmed that after a certain amount of time, it will release the waves, release the ballast, and come up to the surface. And
Looks like we have another question too from Sandra, and she's asking. She's very interested in deep fish. So what's the most amazing fish that we've seen?
The most amazing fish that we've seen, in your expeditions. But there are some really strange kinds of fishes. I remember, at least the one that I remember right now as being one of the weirdest ones is one species that is, the common name is snailfish. That is, it's only found in the deepest trenches of the world's oceans. It's actually the deepest living species of fish. Can live down to 8,000 meters, 8 kilometers, and they have a translucent skin. You can see through them. You can see all the internal organs from the outside, and so their muscle, the skin or muscles are transparent. They have a really large liver. And we often see them come in when we set basically lures with rotting fish. They're scavengers, so they come by and are attracted to that. Those are really, really weird fish. They don't have a bladder, a gas bladder. Because at that pressure, it's not a very good idea to have gases in your body. We have seen recovered fishes that do have gas bladders, and when you bring them back to the surface, they don't look very well because the gas bladder expands and they die in a really horrible way. How about you, Alice? Oh, sorry, Emily.
You know what? This is my very first deep sea expedition.
Oh, yeah.
So
very good.
I think all the fish that we've seen so far have been pretty cool. The only other experience I have with fish is I was in the Arctic and we were dropping a multi-core, which takes multiple sediment cores at one time, and we managed to trap a fish inside one of the core tubes and bring it up alive. A long fish, that was pretty cool. But yeah, we've seen some cool ones. We saw a chimera yesterday.
Oh, we did?
Yeah.
I didn't see that one.
Yeah,
I love
yesterday,
those. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was pretty neat. Some rats.
Yeah, and sometimes you just see, you know, deep, diving 1,000 meters, you see hammerhead sharks, so things like that. That's really, it's always fun when a shark comes around. I wasn't in this expedition, but a couple of years ago, an ROV saw a sperm whale.
Yep. Here in the Gulf.
Here in the Gulf of Mexico. Yeah, that's what would be coming up. So, yeah, you never know what you're gonna see. Sometimes we get really big squid following the ROV down when you go down. It's always a surprise what you're gonna see.
So we have another question. How is your routine while you're in the expedition? Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah. Well, it really varies by person, so
Yeah.
maybe we can share our routines.
So I've been kind of pulling double duty. I'm doing outreach, but I'm also sampling once the ROV comes up. So every time the ROV comes on deck, I have to go out and sample. There are 5 2.5-liter water bottles strapped to the ROV that they use to collect a specific sample of water at a specific depth. And so I've been going out there and sampling that water right away, and then I need to preserve it and also deal with a little bit of the sediment that gets collected too. And then I'm also working to try and tell everybody about what we're doing. And so it's been hard to find a routine because the ROV, there's no set time for when it comes up. So last night it came up at 11 at night, and I went to bed at 4 this morning. But other days I've gone to bed at a normal time and gotten up. So
Yeah, we're kind of always doing a bunch of different things here. Like I give you an example, in the last 72 hours, here I've only slept, I think, like 5 hours total. It's just, as Alison was saying, you never know what the next thing is going to be too far ahead in time. So I normally when the ROV goes in the water, we got to go into the ROV van, and I have to direct the sampling of the corals while it happens. We're also taking images before and after we take the samples to have a record on what pieces of the corals we took and what they look like, to make sure we use that information to basically take into account the changes that we see over time. So as I say, these are sites that have been visited year after year for 7 years, and that work is probably going to continue. So it's important to know how also our scientific work affects the ecosystems. And then, after the dive is over, the ROV comes back on the ship, and have to spend several hours processing the samples, getting them ready for the analysis that we're going to do back in the lab, and also had to, put together all the data that is being collected, what samples were collected, and relate that to the navigation of the ROV systems, and also get ready for the next dive. While that happening, again, the ROV is always in the water, and so you're always trying to find some small time to, sleep and check your email and things like that.
it looks like we have a question from Catalina. She's asking, she's an economics student and interested in biology, and wants to know how our work group is composed professionally. Or do we have a diverse work group on board? I think that answer is yes.
Yeah.
There are 40 people on board total, 16 are scientists, and the rest are crew. We have undergraduate students on board, graduate students, postdocs, researchers, communication specialists. We also have, how many are in the ROV crew? 6 ROV, 7 ROV crew members, and people driving the ship, working to keep our internet and our electronics up to date.
Yeah, so there's a lot of backgrounds. So there's people that have engineer degrees, people that have maritime degrees, biology degrees, yeah, I think there's a lot of different backgrounds. And for example, there's people in the science team alone, there's people from France, I'm from Colombia, South Africa, people from South Africa, here in the US, Germany, chief scientist is German. So it's definitely a diverse set of people.
Got lots of different universities that are represented here, and also we have the U.S. Geological Survey on board. So
yeah,
different things.
Yeah, and there's people, you know, in the crew. There's also subdivisions. So there's the officers, including the captain and the first officer, that are the ones responsible for driving the ship and bringing us where we want to go and keeping us safe.
Yep.
And then there is all the sailors that do all the routine work on the ship to keep the ship running and do the work on deck. And there's engineers that keep the engines running. And there's a team of cooks that make our meals. So they make breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then second dinner at midnight. So it's 4 meals a day because we're working 24 hours. So there's shifts. There's always people awake and working.
They even do your laundry on the ship and fold it for you.
That's really rare.
Pretty amazing.
That's not very usual. But yeah, it's a whole team. It's like a whole floating community here.
Any other questions? Welcome.
Hi. I have 2 questions. First, I want to say thanks for the participation in our class. It's amazing to have you here in our class. And my 2 questions are, the first one is what happens with the samples after the expedition? Do you display the samples in a museum? For example, if I am a researcher interested in a sample I can access, there is a possibility of obtaining that sample, for example. Yes. And the second one is what governments do, or what do governments with the amazing information that you find in the oceans.
So I got the first part of your question, but I didn't get the second part. Maybe I'll answer the first one, and then maybe you can repeat the second question. So in terms of what happens to the samples, there's within this large project, there's many different smaller projects or sub-projects, I would say. So the samples actually they get split in many different ways to different researchers that are involved in the research that is ongoing. So each sample, every single ounce of sample gets analyzed or sent by different teams. And we're trying not to collect more than what we need. So we're being really, really careful at just taking very small samples from the corals because we don't want to kill them. We only want to get a small piece to be able to do the analysis we need to do. But in some cases, we end up with samples that are a little bit larger. And those we can send to museums. So for example, like here in the US, a good museum to send things to is the National Museum of Natural History, the Smithsonian. They're a good repository for samples, especially things that we think might be new, something like new species. That's a really good way to make sure that those samples are accessible by the researchers that can describe them, so taxonomists and things like that. As a commitment, when you receive funding from the U.S. government, you're required to make your data and samples accessible. Obviously, that relies on having extra sample. But if any extra samples that we have, in theory, anybody could request access to it, and obviously after the project or once the project is done. But in general, this is a really sharing community. People are very willing to share the samples and data and resources because, as I was saying, it's really hard to get out to sea, get a big ship and an ROV and do this work. It's not cheap. And so we all are aware of that. So we, as a community, scientific community working in the deep sea, we like to share a lot and help other people that might need samples or data for other projects. And also the non-physical samples of the data get stored in public databases. So the US government has databases for oceanographic data that are public and accessible. So all that data is stored there, and then it can be accessed by anybody. And yeah, if you can repeat the second part of your question, then we can answer. I think you might be muted.
So can you
try again?
Okay.
The second part of the question is about the implications in management, the importance that governments give to the importance in terms of management of all the new species and the information that you collect during the immersions.
Okay, yeah, so actually my research that I'm carrying out here and samples I'm collecting here are linked to a project that actually have another expedition starting in 3 weeks here in the Gulf of Mexico. That is directed at specific goal is to work with managers here of marine protection in the Gulf of Mexico. And that the project involves the managers of the Power Garden Banks National Library, as well as areas protected from fisheries consider essential habitat fishes, things like nurseries. The idea, as I was mentioning earlier, on this population dynamics across the Gulf of Mexico in order to inform the design of a new protected area. So what is the connectivity between the sites? It's important to know where to place a marine protected area, how fishing is going to be protecting not only that local spot, but also other areas in the Gulf of Mexico. Also, how resilient they're going to make it to future possible disasters, such as earthquakes.
Okay, thank you very much, Santiago. And I don't know if anyone has a question. I would like to ask you more about the expeditions. What do you have left to do, and what are other expectations that you might have for these days?
Yeah, so today we are doing the last dive in one of those sites we're monitoring as impacted by the oil spill. Was had some coral affected, that some of them died and some of them were pretty poor shape. Part of the colonies died. So that we're wrapping up that work today. And then in the following days, some of the things we're going to do is visit other sites. We're going to collect other kinds of corals. For example, we're going to collect species Lophilia pertusa, which is that forms reefs, very large reefs. Here, well, in different parts of the world, but in the Gulf of Mexico, they make really big reefs, and there's going to be people collecting that species to bring back to the lab and do experiments about ocean acidification and oil exposure impacts or effects on the corals. Similarly, there's other people are interested in keeping the Paramuricea corals alive and do similar experiments. We're also going to collect samples from coal seep, and we're actually going to do something really interesting. How it works, we're going to try to collect samples of those mussels from hydrocarbon seeps and try to pass it to another ship that is doing research in the area. So the researcher that is interested in the samples is from a different ship. So we're going to try to meet them at sea in the ocean and do transfer. To pass samples to them. What else are we going to be doing? Am I missing anything?
We're just going to keep taking water samples too around the corals, sediment samples.
Yeah, and I'm personally still to collect more samples from water populations in different areas in the Gulf of Mexico. So that work that we're doing, the sampling for genetics, is going to continue. I think that's it. We have 1 week left of work, but we are about 2 days ahead of schedule. We're also hearing that there will be a tropical storm coming in this area on Monday, so that might affect our plans. So we'll see how things develop. It might go a different path, but you never know. So 1 or 2 days in advance. So we'll be keeping an eye on that storm in the next couple of days and see if we have to make any adjustments to our plan.
Yeah, all right, Santiago and Emily, this is really fantastic. This is the first time we're teaching a class on ocean exploration using these technological capabilities and following a number of expeditions, and we really appreciate that you guys can have this. I know you're pretty busy at the moment, and please just let us know what you think about this, and if you think this is worthwhile doing it in all the expeditions.
Yeah, no, definitely. We're happy to be able to use this technology tools that are simple. Having internet access allows us to do this kind of thing. It's really amazing.
Yeah, if we hadn't had the wildlife, had a class connected, so it was great.
Yeah, we're really happy to kind of as much as possible, and it's really great that you are all in this class of ocean exploration. That's a unique opportunity that very few people in the world have to have a dedicated class exploring this topic that is fascinating, and being able to do these things with connecting the ocean exploration happening in real time, I think is really exciting. I would have loved to take that class when I was in university.
Yeah. All right. I don't know if anyone else wants to ask something, or I think you guys must be busy, and it's been almost an hour so far. So I wanted to thank you again, and wish you great luck with the rest of the expedition. Maybe we have a chance later on to talk a little bit more, and I know a lot of our students will be following you and maybe asking in the chat eventually. So thanks so much, and I hope to see you in the Alucia in Colombia. We might have our first ocean of this magnitude in Colombia so far, and thanks to Santiago and Team Chang and a bunch of people, Conservation International, etc. And well, let's see if we can follow up and develop this area in our country, Colombia.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope to see you very soon. And I hope you have a really productive rest of your planet. Yeah.
Thanks for all the great questions.
If you have any more, yeah, send us an email or
Yep. Well,
Twitter.
All right, thank you guys. Have a nice evening or sampling. Yeah, and,
Yeah.
and see you soon. Try to catch up some sleep. It's important too.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, class. Thank you very much for coming in. And if you don't follow the interview, you can see YouTube in a later time. So tell your colleagues that we're gonna keep this in YouTube. All right. Bye bye to everyone. Good evening and never stop exploring.